welcome to the new episode of Risk and Flow. Today's guest is an entrepreneur all the way from Singapore, and I actually have had a lucky to have one of my previous guests also from Singapore, and today I have another entrepreneur from that side of the world. He has over 40 years of experience across 19 countries. And my guest today, he has worked with technology, cybersecurity, and entertainment. And I'm sure today's episode will be full of interesting stories, risks, and rewards. So let's welcome to the studio, Michael Chua. Welcome.
Hello, Jane. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me.
I'm super excited to have you here and hear and share your story about your journey, your entrepreneurial journey in Singapore with variety of industries. I'm sure that will be offering a lot of value to our listeners today. But Michael, you mentioned it is a public holiday in Singapore today. Can you just share at the beginning of the podcast what is the holiday about and how do you celebrate in Singapore these public holidays?
Today is Vesak Day, which is the birth, enlightenment, and when Buddha left the earth. So this day is used to commemorate these 3 stages of Buddha's life. So some people would pray, they would have joss sticks and offerings to the Buddha and all that. That's more of a Chinese tradition. And for the more esoteric ones, we will do chanting and meditation, which I did yesterday with my regular meditation group.
That sounds super beautiful, and you gather somewhere place like a temple to do that together, right?
Yes, the temple that we went and we use every Sunday is a private temple on a private premises. It has a history to that. The owner's mother used to be a medium in the temple, serving the village at that time when it was a village, when there was less people in Singapore. And after the mother passed away, the owner kept everything the same, but it became a private temple because the owner is not a medium, etc. And in land scarce Singapore, a lot of real estate developers is wanting to buy that piece of land, which is big by Singapore standards. But he refused to sell it. He could earn a lot of millions, right? A lot of millions of dollars if he sells the land to build another high-rise condominium or something like that. But he refused, and instead he kept the thing the same way. And behind the house, he built a shed, which is about maybe 1,000 square feet or 10 square meters, for us to meditate and chant every Sunday. Yeah, that's very generous of him. It's an interesting place. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds so beautiful and something I think that is part of your everyday life to meditate and sort of focus on yourself and on your thoughts and find that inner peace, so to say. Is that a big part of your life?
Yes, very, very big part of my life. We go through different stages of life. At some stage, we fear of missing out, and we think that the physical actions and all that is the only thing that matters. So we go out there and we rush and compete and work hard, which is important, but that's not the only thing, because there is the scene, what you can see, which is happening before us, and what we cannot see, the seen and unseen. So for the unseen, for instance, the air that we breathe, we can't see. The thoughts that we think are energy, and this is scientific, not hocus pocus, and that we can't see as well. So when our thoughts travel, intersects with other people's thoughts, and that's where things happen. And eventually, when things manifest, and in many times in my life, things happens out of the blue. It appears to happen out of the blue, but I think it's already in construction outside that I cannot see. Um, yeah. And there's also something called serendipity. Serendipity,
Mm-hmm.
it means that something happens and something else good happens which you didn't intend. Actually, a lot of people think that these things happen by chance, but I don't think so, because you have been thinking about it a lot and somebody else has been thinking about it similarly a lot, and then it meet and then it happens. So it's not by chance. I think your thoughts have made them happen. And because you are not conscious about it, it appears as if it happens by chance. And
Mm.
that's my belief. Yeah.
That's so interesting, and I think that that kind of mindset and approach to life have surely helped you also in your career as an entrepreneur and what comes after that. So I would like to now ask Michael. Thanks for sharing on this your thoughts and start the podcast about the mindset. But can you share us a little bit also? Where have you born and how was your childhood? How was your younger years?
Okay, I was born at a time when Singapore was not rich at all. We were all struggling outside the house. You can see a lot of people struggling to make 3 meals a day, and therefore it was also not very safe. So we learned as a child to be streetwise very quickly. That means avoiding certain areas, and if you can't avoid and you encounter somebody nasty and he wants to fight, you have to fight. So we learn how to fight. I learned how to fight. So in fact, most boys that are hanging around outside those days to play after school, they would have fought at some point of their life, more than once. So unless you are those really good boys that after school stay at home and never gone out, right? Those they probably haven't fought before. Those are minority. So as for me, that was much of my childhood, and I participated a lot in athletics games. I represented school in basketball, softball, high jump, long jump, 100-meter sprints, and all that. So that developed a lot of muscles in me as a child. And I think together with the other activities, the active life, I have developed a kind of muscle memory. So till date, I still have quite a lot of muscle mass for my age. Yeah. And life was, everybody has big families. For families, everybody has
Right.
big families. I have 7 other brothers and sisters. So we all live in a cramped condition. We learn to share and we learn to take care of each other. So that is quite a typical life for people around that time.
That sounds really interesting, and I think those capabilities that you learned while you were young and growing up with such a huge family will have taught you like a lot essential skills, whether it comes to your career right now and your entrepreneurial career. So it sounds really interesting to maybe if I compare to my childhood had here in Europe, in Finland, it's totally different, and it's always interesting to hear how is it to grow up in different parts of the world. What if you tell us a little bit about? Mentioned there were some fights involved as you were a kid. Also, you involved in a lot of sports and activities. What about your family? Was it a traditional, if I think like a traditional way to grow up and go to schools and so on? How was your path, educational path? Did you wear like a sort of courage to go to the college, university, and so on?
Right. Of course, in the Chinese tradition, education is very important, but it has taken a little bit of a twist because in that time, China was a very small country in terms of trade because the world was sanctioning China at that time. The whole world, in fact, sanctioned China because they were communists, like hardcore communists. So they were very poor. There's hardly any trade. All the trades that happen through China comes through Hong Kong. Therefore, it was a very small trickle of trade, and therefore a much smaller need to know Mandarin. Okay. It's not like now. Now, I think if you have a child, whether you're European or American, I would suggest you ask him or her to learn Mandarin. But during those days, it wasn't the case. And conversely, the British were still having a lot of influence in terms of business in Singapore, and so were the Americans. So English was more important. And although traditionally most Chinese people would send their children to Chinese medium schools, that means the entire thing is conducted in Mandarin.
Right.
My mother took the bold step against the common practice of most other mothers to send from the third child onwards, she sent us all to English language schools, and that has helped with learning new technologies and getting jobs later on in our life. And subsequently, when I traveled, obviously English was very important. I went to Australia, and back those days without internet and social media, there was a lot of ignorance about Chinese looking people. You must be totally cut off from the rest of the world, and they have funny thoughts about Asians at that time. And they will often marvel that I could speak English. And I told them I learned them in school from day one, right? Yeah. So that was a one turn. But of course, we will be tightly supervised to do our homework, to score well in exams and all that. That's typically Chinese. Yeah. And in a family, if you are number one, number two, you have a lot of responsibilities to take care of number three, number four. Then number three, number four has to take care of number five, number six.
Right.
It was like that because there's only one mother, right? There's only one mother, and she worked very hard, I would say.
That sounds really great that your mother have made like those sort of wise decisions, maybe different decisions if compared to some other families, to put you in the school to learn English straight away. And of course, what comes to growing up a big family, of course, those first first children need to take care of the youngest, which also I think from the early on teaches you those essential skills in life and career. So I wonder, you mentioned that the education was important. So what was your kind of educational path? Did you do all your education in Singapore, or did you go abroad already at the young age, as you have been traveling around the world? So I'm curious to know about this.
I did in Singapore, and then in my university, I did it in Australia.
Right.
Yeah. Then after Australia, I started working overseas in Europe and all over the world. And then at some point, I took my master's degree in the UK. Yeah.
Right. And what was what was your studies about? What did you study at first?
When I was a child, I was very intrigued and amazed by a particular advertisement that shows a little boy putting stones on a little creek and blocking the water. And then he turns around, he has a hard hat, and he's constructing a great dam, like hydroelectric dam. So I thought, wow, that's very impressive. I want to be like that boy. So I went to study civil engineering. But after graduation, I didn't practice because the lure of computer programming was a lot more rewarding and easier to do, easier to get that kind of jobs. It paid more as well. Especially when I was in Australia at that time during graduation, I had to become a site engineer, which means supervising Australian tradesmen, which I believe at that age I was unable to do because it's a different culture. Now, Australians are very independent people. They do not respect you just because you are the boss. They respect you as a person. So if they
Right.
respect you as a person, that means you have to understand them, right? And it was hard to understand them because they are so different. Like, yeah, they'll be into sports and they work efficiently, but they work short hours, kind of different style at that time. So I believe I wouldn't be able to make it. So I became a computer programmer and subsequently I do my postgraduate in computer science.
Mhm. And was it a risky decision? Do you consider it as a risky decision to go to Australia, then to UK? Was it were those risky decisions back then?
To Australia, no, because I'm going there to do a degree and the plan originally was to come back directly to Singapore to work and then settle down. But I think the move to the UK was a silly risk that only young people can make. Because when I landed in Heathrow Airport, then it dawned on me that I didn't have a job, I didn't have a place to stay, I have only £1,000 in my pocket. I have to make it in 6 weeks. After 6 weeks, I'll be broke. I have to come back to Singapore with nothing. So I was willing to take that risk. I didn't know anybody. And the agent that spoke to me when I was in Australia was a very smooth speaking salesman because I asked
Mhm.
him what are the chances of me getting a job over there, and he simply said, "Well, it depends on how you do in the interview." So I thought, "Wow, good chance," because normally I do well in interviews. But when I went there, he couldn't even remember my name. Who Michael who? He couldn't even remember my name, and he said, "Okay, no problem. We'll look out for you." Then I was thinking, you mean you were not looking out for me until I call you, right? So that was
Right.
quite a disappointment. These are the kind of petty risks that I went through. And and then of course the financial risk. I didn't have a lot of money. And that was taking time. And physically I could only stay in the very cheap places like King's Cross, which is basically a red light district. So on the streets there will be hookers and drug addicts and all
Right.
that. And again I had to learn to be streetwise very quickly from the station to the hotel. I walked very quickly and right into the hotel. And in the hotel, well, still a very cheap hotel. In the hotel, at least it's safe because they are not allowed to go in. And even the hotel residents were kind of uh, down and out people. A lot of them are paid by social security to have a room there. Otherwise, they'll be homeless kind of people. They are not working. Most of them, they're not working. They're living on government handouts and all that. So some of them are friendly, and you don't know whether they are friendly
Mhm.
for a good reason or bad reason. So you have to make your judgment very quickly. You don't want to be a snob either. You don't want to be somebody that ignores people just because they are poor, right? So you have to be streetwise and smart and also fair to people. Yeah, quite educational.
That sounds quite a big risk you took back then to just go into
Yeah.
another country with only a little money in your pocket. So can you share what happened back then in UK, and was it the risk eventually, was it worth of taking?
Oh, of course, it's worth taking. I mean, if I gonna do it again, I'll do the same. It was harder to do those things at that time because there wasn't the internet and social media and YouTube. You really have very scant information. So I think it was a lot harder. If I'm going to do it today, it's very easy. Nowadays, it's quite common. I hear people from Peru, for example, got a job in Singapore through the internet. Right? It's
Right. Yeah.
possible and it's easier because you fix everything, contract, sign everything, then you fly over. Those days, no, everything is still paper. You still send by post or you fax it through a machine. And to find a machine is quite expensive. I mean, I mean, you can't buy a machine those days easily like that. So you find a hotel and then you sweet talk the hotel man and then you pay some money and he fax it to the agent for you. So a lot of things that we take for granted now were very difficult. Then after that, the 6th week I was almost giving up. Then this agent saw that I was so depressed. I work hard for you, and he got me a job. Yeah. And thereafter, once you get started, then it was easier. You are a proven track record in the country. You get other contracts. By the way, I was a freelance. I was not an employee. So I get
Right.
contracts after contracts. And after UK, I moved over to Brussels. From Brussels, I wanted to go to Germany. Didn't make it the first time. I went to Holland. After that, Germany, Luxembourg, Hungary, South Africa, Middle East, Japan, Malaysia, all over the world. So uh, it, they were very laborious days. They were very tedious. Life was hard because on paper you plan that you can spend 3 months in this country and then 3 months in that country, but
Mm-hmm.
the adjustments and arrangements and the dangers and the risks just tired me out. I at the moment now back in Singapore, I really don't like to travel. I don't even travel for leisure now. So many
Right.
people, when they ask me, are you traveling is holidays? You know what for? I'm quite relaxed now. If I travel, I come back, I need another holiday, right? And I only travel maybe for personal reasons or relationship reasons. Recently, one of my students invited me to visit his hometown in Ningxia province in China. So I went there because he's my student, right?
Right.
I went there, and as it turned out, it was a very pleasant trip. The place was a semi-desert region, and we get to stay in the desert. I get to see some of the de-desertification efforts that the Chinese government has put in, right, to to put in dry grass on the sand to prevent sand loss, then planting grass,
Mm-hmm.
having solar panel farms, like their farms, solar panel farms are huge, enormous. Then the secondary effect is that it creates some shelter underneath. It's cooler, so grass can grow as well. Yeah, so
Right.
it was quite an eye opener. That was unexpected, but quite an eye opener. So I only travel in instances like this, or in Malaysia, some people got married, and I'll just go over there. Yeah,
That sounds quite a lot of traveling you have done in your life, as you mentioned.
yeah, a lot, a lot.
Europe to Africa to Saudi Arabia and all over the world. In what point did you started your entrepreneurial career? You have established two companies. Can you share about those a little bit?
Well, I think right from the beginning, I've never been an employee other than national service, which is compulsory in Singapore, which you get a paycheck regularly, right?
Right.
But other than that, I have always been a freelance. So freelancing has a certain entrepreneurial zeal to it, particularly if we are looking internationally. So I started that way, and there are instances where a few of us freelancers will gather together, form a company, because then we can bid for bigger projects. So the two companies that I set up eventually, one is a consulting company, a cybersecurity consulting company, which I have a small team and we do small stuff. The second one is a waste to energy system company, which we take garbage and bake it in think of it as a gigantic oven. We bake it, get the steam out. When the steam gets out, it generates electricity through steam turbines. And then
Right.
the garbage, actually about 80% of such garbage are organic waste. Well, a lot of it is water, but other than
Uh-huh.
that, the solids are about 80% is organic waste, and you probably have 20% of recyclables. The organic waste are also recyclables. They can be fertilizer and soil and compacted and sanitized to make bricks, hollow blocks, and all that to make buildings. But the recyclables will be aluminum, glass, metal. Yeah. So those are recyclable. And the system that we sold was quite advanced for its time. It automatically separates the recyclables using electrostatic magnets. So it takes away the aluminum, and also no need to have a physical manual intervention for separation. So that was a good technology. That
Uh-huh.
was something which don't need to have extensive explanation. Unlike the other company that I formed, cybersecurity, which if you roll back during that time, people didn't know what was cybersecurity. In fact, we didn't call it cybersecurity. The term was not invented yet. We call it information security, which is a more
Right.
accurate description because you are protecting the information, right? So for that business, I have to explain everything, and people still do not understand. Right? I mean, at that time, now young people they're more savvy, and people kind of have heard before, read before what is cybersecurity, but those days it was very difficult. So I was fed up with having to explain. I mean, if you have to explain a product, it's very hard to sell. So I went into this
Right.
other product, which is waste to energy system, which didn't need much explanation. I said, give me your garbage. I turn it to
Mhm.
money. Not much explanation needed, right? They won't be
Yeah.
asking for the voltage and all that unless their engineers are there. They won't be asking for voltage and detail like that. So it was
Yeah.
easy to explain. But the catch was that those machines are very advanced machines and they are very expensive, and they the countries that need them the most, like Indonesia and Philippines and all, they do not have the money. So you have to think of ways of funding these projects. And they too, of course, will look at funding the projects. And one of the other major hurdles of selling machines like this is always the question about how long is the return of investment? When will I break even, right? And of course, it will not be within 5 years. And they all want it within 5 years because that is the term that the politician has. So they don't want to take the risk, spend the money, have that machine installed, then they get voted out of power, and then the next person benefit from it. So it was a very selfish attitude towards investing in infrastructure, which is for the long-term good of the country. And arguably, you can say that in any
Mhm.
democratic system, then it won't work because politicians are probably more selfish than me and you put together, right? So they always think about their
Of
term.
course.
When I spend the money, it must benefit me within my term. So that was an added hurdle.
Mhm.
And I told them there's no way I can make the ROI, return on investment, less than 5 years. In fact, we gave them 12 years, and ROI length, the period problem, and then also them funding themselves is quite a problem. So they also had some dubious way of finding funding, and that I found, or my partners and me found to be a little bit risky, because if they have gotten
Right.
money from ill-gotten gains, if nothing happened, it's fine. We collect the money, make the profit, and run. Right? But if something happens, which say maybe that money comes from a drug lord or something like that, and if it's investigated, it goes down to the entire chain, and then you can be implicated for being accessory to their crime. So that had also worried
Right.
me, and therefore eventually I sold that my part of the business.
That sounds all really interesting. And if I have my facts right, those were like the early 2000 when you
Yeah,
established your company, 2002, 2004, and you
yeah,
mentioned the cyber security. I think you were quite thinking quite thinking ahead, as at the moment now we are in 2025. The cybersecurity, of course, it's like a really huge topic, and we need those professionals in that area. So you already back then were um, establishing something around the cybersecurity, which I think was like a very visionary approach, and risky, I think.
risky.
Do you
Yes,
think it was
yeah,
risky back then? And can you share, was it a risky decision to jump to
yes, yes,
this
yes,
company and establish your own company?
yes. It is risky because if you are going into a new business or new concept, there'll be more hard to sell. So the risk was very big actually, and I was also in the wrong country. Singapore is a trading country. Up till today, is trading, mostly trading. We have
Right.
done well. We try to do other things, right? We try to do technology, pharmaceutical, but mostly it's trading. So there isn't this culture of looking at technology in substantial depth. Okay, if you are a PhD
Mhm.
student doing AI in a university, yeah, you look at that, but you're an exception, right? But generally, if you meet another, say, a professional accountant or a doctor, it's unlikely that he talks about information security or cyber security, or willing to listen to you explaining it.
Right.
Right. So it's the wrong country. Up till now, I think it's still a wrong country to do something like that. Basically, it's a trading company. I mean, the country has put in money to support startups and all that, but startups is hit and miss, right? I mean, most startups will fail within 18 months, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and you said that was a risky decision, and also the risky decision to go to UK, then go to cybersecurity. I wonder, have you always be this kind of risk taker and willing to take risks? What do you think, if you reflect your childhood and your career? Are you a risk taker as a
Yes, I
person?
think so. I think even as a child, when Singapore was not very safe, I always go to those secluded areas. It can be
Right,
dangerous. It can be danger from maybe a bigger boy trying to extort money from you, or you might face a bunch of wild dogs coming after you.
right,
But I still do those things. Yeah. And in school, even for art lessons, most students will be painting the easiest one, just to finish the assignment and send, right? But I'll be painting things I really believe in, and they tend to be complicated and laborious. And sometimes I get the highest mark, but other times I can't complete in time, so I can't get the highest mark. So even that, I took the riskier path. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, that's interesting that you already from the early age have had that curiosity, maybe make those dangerous sort of decisions and take those risks, and they still uh, go with you on these days. But I wonder, you, as you mentioned those continents and countries you've been into, and then your companies and all these huge career you have. I wonder, can you make a maybe a little bit make a short summary about those countries, and what did you do in those countries? And now you are back in Singapore, but how was your risky days on those countries, and what did you do back then?
Okay, you have. I think for a start, there are different categories of countries. You have the
Yeah.
Western developed countries, including Australia, and then you have the oil-rich countries, which is Middle East, right? Then you have the emerging countries in East Asia. At that time, still emerging. Now it's more emergent. So
Right.
that's another category. And then you have a category of newly liberated countries. So, for instance, South Africa post apartheid, and then you have Hungary just got out from hardcore communism, the Iron Curtain. Then you have Hong Kong. I was there before the handover to China. Yeah. So these are new economies, new countries. So the different categories present different risks. I think the Western developed countries has the lowest risk because there was just so much economic activity at that time, and there was a lot of emphasis on technology. And those were the Cold War days as well, where the military spends a lot of R&D for technology. So that creates more jobs, even spreading it to the civilian sector. So yeah, that one is very low risk. Then you look at East Asia, also quite low risk because generally safe, physically safe. The economy was also growing, so it was quite safe. Then the newly liberated countries, they are a bit funny. Other than Hong Kong, Hong Kong life went on almost the same. But South Africa is dangerous. I mean, apartheid time
Right.
was a lot safer than post-apartheid time. It was very dangerous for men and women, for anybody. You see people carrying guns, and yeah, that's just a
Right.
way of life. If I have a gun, you don't come near because I'll shoot you if you try to be funny, right? So that was not safe at all. And then Hungary, Okay, Hungary would have been that unsafe if the people are uneducated and uncultured, but Hungary is actually a very cultured place, right? Highly cultured. When I hop into the real estate agent's car, he's a broken down Lada actually, and he was asking me, what books do I read? Yeah, in Singapore, which is a lot richer than Hungary even today, I can't imagine a real estate agent asking me, what books do I read? What concerts am I going to watch tonight? And if I say yes, he will describe the concert for me.
Right.
So Hungary was able to achieve a very respectable level of stability because they were educated and highly cultured. There are still some petty people trying to cheat you in restaurants, get you drunk and take your money. It happens.
Right.
We walk into a very rough basement cavern, a bar as well, where it's just the wrong bar. Every city has that. Yeah. So there are such places, but generally okay. Um, yeah. So I would say this category of risk. I think the riskier part is the new economies and South Africa or different parts of Africa as well. Those are more risky
Sure.
where you don't know whether things as agreed will be delivered. Whereas in Western Europe, we can bring them to court and all that. And usually you don't have to. I mean, things happens.
That's a really interesting history around the world, and I think you have gathered a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience on those days. And really, yeah, as you mentioned, it sounds really risky to go those countries that people need to carry a gun with them, and maybe you find yourself in some situation that you rather wouldn't want to be, but and now you are still here, and those days are behind. But yeah, sounds really risky. I wonder, during those years and during your career, you have had a lot of experience, but can you share maybe some of your, if you think about, for example, this cybersecurity company and the time after that, what were some main challenges that you faced, and how did you overcome those challenges back then?
Okay, I was selling in Singapore, Malaysia, and some parts of East Asia, and I just came back home, and I do not have the ground context, personal context to kickstart the business, which I underestimated. In Asia, although we look very westernized and advanced, it's still very Asian and very based on who you know than what you know really. So there was a desperate need to extend my network quickly. I learned to communicate, to network, to smell where the opportunities are very quickly. Then to explain to people, I mentioned before what information security is. Yeah, yeah, mostly that sales is difficult. Then you have to decide whether what kind of sales method do you want to use. You want to sell by telling them what you know and they are confident of you and then they hire your services, or you want to sell them fear. Do you want to sell them that if you don't hire my
Mhm.
services, you go ahead and hire some mediocre people. You run the risk of losing a lot of money in a security breach and all that. So some people, they will sell by fear, and it seems that fear works. People like to be scared, and then they'll buy.
Yeah, if there's a risk involved, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, if you talk about a lot of that you have taken risks and you are a risk taker, and it surely reflects through your career, as what already told us. So I wonder, if you think about risks, maybe also reflect back on the beginning of the episode. You mentioned the meditation and the temples and so on. So what do you think about risk as a word itself? Is it a positive or negative thing? Is it just maybe some inner power for you. How is your risk perception? How do you see it in your life?
Well, risk to one person may not be risk to another person. So a risk is an opportunity, because if things are too stable from my perspective, I think the good stuff has already all been taken. So there need to be certain risks. And thereafter, you have to think about what your risk appetite is. You got to think that if I take up this and it fails totally, will I be wiped out? Right. And if I'm wiped out, how am I going to, what is the next step I'm going to do? So you need to have a bit of safe, soft landing if you take risk and to understand your risk appetite. But taking risk, you must, because if a person who hasn't taken risk in his life, he hasn't done anything, I think. Yeah.
That's really well put. It if you haven't taken any risk, you haven't maybe had the full experience of life.
Yeah, yeah.
But what happened after those years of you after you had your companies, as you have worked in technology and various industries? Now you're working with entertainment. So tell us what happened after those company years, and how your career
All right.
changed after.
Well, I was a freelance IT professional consultant, minding my own business. And one day I got a message from the internet and say that they're looking for an actor for their short film. And out of curiosity, I said yes. And when I turned up for the audition and subsequently the rehearsals, the director was very generous with her compliments about my ability to act. And at that time, I believed her. I didn't know any better. I believe her. Okay. You say I'm good, I'm good.
Right.
If she had said that, look, Michael, you're really bad, please give up and die, I wouldn't have blamed her at all. And therein lies the importance of telling an honest positive. And look how far this honest positive had taken me. It has given me the courage to go into the industry, to step in. And by now, 15 years later, I've done over 400 productions. I won several awards, including behind the camera, which eventually I made my own
Right.
content, and have numerous productions gone viral. So gone viral, you're talking about 3 million to 30 million, 40 million views. So those were totally unexpected. On the just prior to her sending an email, I didn't even think that I'll become an actor, let alone one that has won awards and been to places and having viral videos, and now eventually making your own videos and also winning awards from those videos. So the first step, why it happens, I don't know. I asked her why she chose me. She said gut feeling, and that's very arty-farty answer. It doesn't quite help me. So
Right.
perhaps subconsciously, I have already thought about it, maybe to tell stories, for instance. Because before that, I was blogging about my travels and my experience, my meditation. So that is a kind of storytelling just by pictures and text. So this has extended to moving visuals and sound. Yeah. So I think it's an extension. I believe the mind must have been thinking about it subconsciously. So as I said, if your thoughts travel and somebody else's thought coincide with you, eventually he or she finds you and then you hit it and make something.
Right, such an interesting happening there, that you just one day got an email, and you want to, or you then happen to go that audition, and then your career goes from totally different direction. Was that
Yeah.
acting? You said acting. So what was that, another big risk in your career? You totally changed maybe your life and your career at that point. Was it a
Yes,
risky
yes,
decision
yes.
again?
I think it was risky because, hey, I didn't know anything. And I have to spend a lot of time on it. It is so time spent there is an opportunity cost for doing something else. So that was a risk in that if I spend a lot of time and then it didn't turn out to have anything beneficial for the long term good, right? then it'd be a waste. So as it turned out, it's good. I not only benefits me, but I think the stories that has gone viral were viral for reasons. They touch a lot of hearts, tell a lot of stories, send a lot of messages, a lot of moral stories or messages that the story has conveyed. It probably has helped a lot of people. I got fan mails nowadays, some of them thanking me for making the film because I think one of them had depression, a serious depression. And he said that after watching my film, he could move on. Yeah, so
Oh,
he was stuck in a rut. And this is totally unplanned. I didn't know he even existed before. And so after making the film and gone viral, he watched it and it has helped his life. And there are a lot of others because subsequently when another film went viral, I got even a soldier from that South Indian military base called Garcia something. Yeah,
right.
he texted me, and I thought this must be a scam. Who lives there, right? I mean, there's hardly anything happening there. That, as it turned out, it was true, and he thanked me because he says as he can relate to it very well. It has messages and lessons that he learned from the film. So this is now a more generous way of saying that it benefit others other
Yes.
than myself. So the risk was well taken, well taken. But in terms of money, of course, entertainment is a very tough industry. It's probably one of the toughest industry around. It is an industry that you have to keep going for auditions, which is like interviews, right? Whereas if I
Right.
find a job as a cybersecurity officer, I have one interview and that if I don't quit, I can stay in that job for 10 years, 20 years. No, for acting, every job you go for an audition. Very rarely that you do not need an audition. So
Right.
even if you are a big shot or now by then I have awards and a few viral videos, you are still treated the same. You stand in the line. When it's your turn, you go into the room, you do your lines and present your scene and see whether the director will be treating you like a newbie, actually like a beginner. And say, can you do this scene slightly different with your different emotions and stuff like that? So you still be treated the same. So it is a consistent test of your confidence and your craft if you're an actor. And very unlike other professions where you can slide into complacency more easily.
Yeah, it seems also in acting you need to take a risks every day or every audition you go.
Yes,
You
yes,
need to put
yes.
yourself all in, right?
Yeah. And sometimes you spend a lot of time preparing, you got to memorize the lines and so on. You got to find where the studio is. And after that, you didn't get the gig.
Right.
Yeah.
But where do you find maybe that inspiration to sort of start over, learn about acting, learn about new things? Where does this, again, that risk taker and inspiration to come, maybe established something again from zero? Where does that come from?
Okay. Looking back in hindsight, listening to the first director that gave me a lot of compliments, and she was surprised that I could deliver a lot better than I suppose her other candidates. Then I was wondering why, and I can even cry on cue. Though, so there is a scene where there's a lady and me, we are talking, and then both of us eventually cry in the scene. But the girl cannot cry, and girls usually are more emotional and more easily to get into a crying state. So the director paused the shooting. He said, "Okay, pause. Anyway, we have to adjust the lights." So they adjusted the lights, and while I was waiting, they said, "Michael and Vanessa, you all don't move. Stand there because you don't change the spot. We measured the spot already. While we adjust the lights." So standing there, not moving, and just able to move my mouth, quite boring. So I started joking with her. Then I laugh, she laughs, and all that. And the director said, "Michael, stop joking. Keep in the emotion because when uh, she needs to cry later. Now, how can you both be joking and laughing, right?" Then I turned to the director very arrogantly. I told her, "Look, when your cameras roll, I can cry. What's your problem?" And she said, "You can, but she cannot." Then I
Right.
realized, oh yeah, that's true. So from then on, these days, whenever they are adjusting lights or having a pause, I would keep in the emotions and character to respect the director and also to give
Mhm.
the co-actors the same environment and ambience to deliver later. And I was wondering why I can do that and she cannot, right? I thought back, I wrote it back, and I think it's because of meditation. Meditation clears up the mind, and when the mind is clear, then new characters can get in more easily. So it's like a cup. The usefulness of the cup is in its emptiness. If the cup is full, then I try to pour tea in, it can only overflow. So same with the mind. If the mind is full, it's very hard to get into another character. And that explains why some actors who are full of themselves will be the same in any character they act in. They
Right.
cannot be somebody else. So of course, for any actor, even if you can get into another character, right, you still retain maybe 20% of yourself. That's normal. But some actors is 100%. Yeah, you act as a villain, this character. Act as a nice father, this character, the same. Yeah. So I think meditation had helped a lot, and that's how I get a lot of achievements in acting. Because if you think about acting, it is living sincerely under imaginary circumstances. And that means researching the character, getting in emotions, and eventually doing it so smooth that the audience have forgotten that they are acting. They are totally into it. They think they are in the story themselves. And that is the emotional connection that we want to achieve. And when that is achieved, then you experience magic. And even on a
Mm.
stage, I've been in stage I've been in stage performance before where I did that particular act and there was absolute silence. The auditorium was like thousands of people, right? It was absolute silence for that 1 minute or something. You can almost hear the pin drop, and that's where you realize you have made an emotional connection instantly with so many people.
Mhm.
That's magic. That's absolute magic.
That's super interesting. I think your background, especially coming from Singapore and having those weekly meditations with your group from, I think from, was that part of your childhood as well? The meditation and all this, just to ask quickly.
No, no, childhood. I was playing and fighting half the time.
And when did you find then meditation as a part of your life? Because I think what it brings, it's also a topic that we talk about a lot of at the moment in any kind of job or
Yeah,
as an entrepreneur,
yeah.
whether it's a startup, whether it's just 9 to 5 work, people talk a lot about the meditation and the focus and the calming your mind as it's more difficult these days. So I think those what you just described have helped a lot you in your entrepreneurial and career after that. So when did you start? Can you quickly tell us when did the meditation became part of your life?
Okay, my first experience was when I was in university. I was very stressed up, and the university counselor, who is also practicing yoga, played
Hmm.
some music and get me a cassette tape, to learn to meditate. And I did that a bit, but after I got relaxed, I didn't bother. So it's only when I came back to Singapore, and just before I started my company, I went into meditation and I felt that there was a part of my consciousness that I wasn't aware even existed, being a hard-nosed engineer, right? And it was
Right.
so different. Life can be very beautiful if you calm your mind. The rest does not really matter. And therefore, thereafter, it became a part of my life.
That's really interesting approach and that you have find, as you mentioned, as an engineer, it's totally something different to start
Yeah.
maybe yoga and meditation. But Michael, I have 2 more questions for you as we come to the end of the episode. And again, time flies with talking with you and listening this interesting story. But I wonder if you think back all those risks you've taken so far and during your career, going to the UK, starting your company, traveling around, being all around the world, different cities and continents. So if you think all of those risks and even the biggest risks you've taken, were those eventually worth of taking? What do you think?
Yeah, definitely worth taking, because if I don't take those risks, then I wouldn't have experience and open a lot of doors. But that said, that is a survivor bias. I mean, if I'm dead, then won't be telling you this, right? But I'm not
Right.
dead, so I think it's definitely worth it. It opens a lot of doors. A lot of world opens up, and I get to understand a lot of things. Even as late as getting into acting, it was a world that I didn't know existed, right? How you get into emotions, how you get into a different character, how you tell stories, how you get totally immersed into something and make that magical emotional connection with a huge audience instantly. And of course, in terms of film, the internet helps. When it went viral, I was in some of the tourist places in Singapore, and the Japanese know me. How can a Japanese know me? I know I'm an actor, but
Right.
then it's through the internet. It dawned on me that the internet is so powerful. YouTube is so powerful that, but now I'm used to it. And I get fan mails everywhere. But at that time, I was thinking, how could that happen? So one magic lead to another. The next one, I don't know what now. Let's see.
Yeah, that's actually my last question about the next steps, the next risks. How do you think? How do you see the future? Maybe in aspect of your technological background, but also in your career at the moment. So, how is the maybe the future seems like, and what's the next risk ahead?
It's quite hard to plan my future mechanically or in a structured, rational way. Usually, I do that. And it seldom go according to plan. But things will happen, like the sudden desire to study in Australia, and seeing a newsletter saying there are opportunities in UK. I went, and then getting to become an actor out of the blue. Uh, so usually the successful transitions happens when I see a certain spark. So for instance, sometimes I wake up in the morning and a certain word will appear in my mind, like lecturing, and that fire up my entire body. Every cell is active and interested in that word, only for less than a second.
Right.
And recognizing that split second is very important, because that is a message. I don't know from where. That's a message that is something you ought to be going in and you can't go wrong. The next step is to do it. And when you do it, it does not necessarily mean that it's easy. You may have problems and misunderstanding, but this is something you need to do. And the trick is to recognize this spark. I'm getting better at recognizing such sparks nowadays. I think those days it happened to me, but I didn't take it seriously. Now I do. I take it very seriously.
Mm. That sounds really interesting, and I think this is a really interesting thought to finish this episode for today. Uh, to go through all these risks that you have gone in your life, and to recognize maybe those sparks and risks that will be ahead and are definitely, I think they will be also worth of taking for you, Michael. But for today, I want to say a huge thank you for sharing your amazing story from growing up in Singapore, going around the world, establishing your company in cybersecurity, and a lot more. So, Michael, I really appreciate your being here in the studio with me today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Jane.
Thank you. And also Risk and Flow says thank you for all viewers and listeners. And again, we see you in the next episode. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.